Hello, you guys. I don't think I'm going to need a fair use disclaimer for this, but let's just do it for the sake of YouTube. Um, Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 U.S.C. 107. All right, so today, you guys, I'm going to be doing a screen share of a book that I hope that you will read. If you have children, I hope you'll keep it in your house. This book was included in the Charlotte Medical Journal of 1905. So I'm pulling this book out of an archive. Obviously, the book is very, very old, so I don't have a firsthand copy. I have a folio copy. The link to the folio copy is in the description box. It's currently sitting at the library of the University of North Carolina. It is part of the North Carolinian collection of antiquarian books. Now, you're gonna go, Irene, why are you reading us a book from 1905? It's a very short book. I'm actually gonna start on page 8 because before page 8, it talks about white people. But I wanna go into how white people view Blacks. And what was fascinating about this book is it talks about the types of approaches white people take with Blacks, including white people who are nice to Black people, what their mindset is like. I think there's nothing like hearing the words for yourself. See, transparency like this is rare in this day and time. However, once in a while you'll hear it, and some of this ideology you will recognize from modern times. We think that this stuff dies out, but the perpetuation of Darwinism in school, the perpetuation of certain mental concepts about Black people, this stems from a very real teaching that was done at the highest levels of white society. And so we're going to go to printed materials that are real. We're not going to speculate here. We're going to let white people tell us what they think about us and our position in society. And this book talks about where they think what will happen to Black people if we try to compete with them on an equal playing field. Essentially, it will be our annihilation. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and we're just going to get right into this. We're not even going to, pussyfoot around here. We're just going to jump right in. I encourage you to read this book to your children, to go to the link. Keep this book in your archives. It's an important piece of literature. Again, this is medical literature. It was printed in the Charlotte Medical Journal. It's called Natural Selection and the Race Problem. And so again, I'm going to skip through the first 8 pages. This was written by Benjamin K. Hayes, MD, in Oxford, North Carolina. I'm going to skip through the first few pages because it's just talking about from the end of slavery to when this book was written, and the problem of what to do with this lower class of people. And then it talks about whites' positioning in society. We don't need to read about how much white people venerate themselves. So that's why we're going to skip over it. We're going to start with page 8. And it starts with, "And the Black man, what of him? As he was known to the great Egyptians," so notice that they're saying Egyptians aren't Black in this, right? "As he was known to the great Egyptians, to the Greek, and to the Roman, even so He is found in his African home today. At the dawn of history, he was fully developed, and during the past 3,000 years, he has not made one step of progress. Independently, he has shown no power to advance. See, this is why I tell y'all we need to stop being so humane, because independently, we've shown no power to advance. We're not like white people. We're not comfortable just going out and slaughtering and terrorizing people into submission. Independently, he has shown no power to advance. The superiority of the American Negro to his African brother, who is a savage and a cannibal, is due to slavery. Did you know that about yourselves, Black people? That the reason American Blacks are better than all other Blacks is simply because of slavery, and could have been acquired no other way. Men who ascribe debased characteristics of the Negro to slavery show short-sightedness that is pitiable. Let me read that sentence again. Men who ascribe debased characteristics of the Negro to slavery show a short-sightedness that is pitiable. If you think any problems with the Black people are caused because of slavery, you are stupid, because slavery was a good thing. The present attainment of the American Negro has been solely the result of his close personal contact with the white man. Nor should it be forgotten that most of the leaders of the Negro race are men with Anglo-Saxon blood in their veins, who partake more of their Caucasian than their Ethiopian lineage. This is going to move me into my series with the problem with white Blacks. Because the reason Barack Obama could get elected, the reason people like Kamala Harris, the reason Cory Booker is okay. I saw a comment a white man made on Cory Booker, a video about Cory Booker. He said, there's not much African left in him. They see their own blood and they believe it to be superior, so that is a better kind of Negro. Nor should it be forgotten that most of the leaders of the Negro race are men with Anglo-Saxon blood in their veins, who partake more of their Caucasian than their Ethiopian lineage. Some of these are splendid men who are making heroic efforts to elevate the Negro race. Others of mixed blood are vicious and turbulent. These are the men who create trouble. Left to itself, a Negro population, itself, not themselves, itself, because we're not people. Left to itself, a Negro population lapses into barbarianism. Without white people, we will be barbarics. We will be barbarians. That's what he's claiming. People believe this today. Make no mistake. We hear Jesse Lee Peterson, a full-on Black man, saying this on his show all the time. The Republic of Haiti is an example of this. A recent winter in the world's work has thus described it. A government without a practical school system, a government whose expenditures are seldom made for improvements, a government without adequate asylums or hospitals, a government of petty thieving, continual insurrection, promiscuous poisoning, and counterfeit finance. This is the Negro Republic of Haiti, the land where the Black rules. They cut Haiti out of all trade and all of everything, and then said that the fall of Haiti was due to the fact that a bunch of Black people were there, not the fact that they purposely isolated Haiti, an island that is dependent on import and export. That's not why. It's because a bunch of Black people were running it. Haiti is proof of how debased we are when left without guidance from our white leaders, according to this author. In Popular Science Monthly, a writer on ethnology says, only in single exceptional cases have leading spirits ever risen from out these lower castes. And where the separatist movement has been confined to these colored primitive races, it has not it has led not only to cutting loose from the mother country, but also a more or less complete renunciation of European civilization. In this country, just so far as personal contact with the whites has been withdrawn, to that extent has the Negro retrograded. We are hurt, according to him, by being released from slavery. We have retrograded. It is a serious question if he has not relapsed more during the past 40 years by losing the intimate association of the white man than he has gained by the 200 million that have been spent for his education. The Negro has been domesticated. But the question is, will he ever become an integral part of Anglo-American civilization? Having noted the contrast between the two races, and that's the contrast he talks about, is what he talks about earlier in the book that I didn't read. Let us ask, why do men of Anglo-Saxon blood who have never yielded a foot of soil that they once possessed, who have never, so he's just going to ignore everything that happened with the Moors, right? According to him, Anglo-Saxons, they never give up their land. They are cocky. If you listen to racist whites talk today, these are their talking points. Cocky. And they're cocky because we let them be cocky. They're cocky because we're unwilling to do what they are willing to do. Why do men of Anglo-Saxon blood who have never yielded a foot of soil that they once possessed, who have never designed to mix with a conquered people, but have established independent civilizations in the home of the Indian, in that's talking about the Americas, in India, in Australia, who have robbed the Boers of their possessions, who have defiled the Arctic snows and tropic suns, and have penetrated to the most remote islands of the seas in search of new lands to conquer. Why does such a cherished race in its bosom, one of the humblest races on earth? He's asking, why are they humble after he said all that non-humble stuff? To my mind, the answer is clear. There has been no struggle for existence. Peep it. They don't struggle to keep their power because we won't fight back. The dirt they do, we won't do that same dirt. We got 99.9 excuses why we can't make moves like they make moves. And it's got them big-headed today, big-headed. This is the same mindset today. Whites built everything. They conquered everything. They rule everything. The same cockiness he exhibits in this book is the cockiness they have today. When we talk about South Africa, the land was worth nothing until we came and we cultivated it. All because we want to be pussified. They're in a delusion. The Black man has never been a competitor, but has always been subservient to the white race. This is a medical journal. But you guys want to act like this isn't the belief now. What did that white judge tell the Black woman that was talking? Did you guys see that footage? Oh, I wish I had that to play right now. In modern day, he put her Blackness in her place. You, as a Black person, don't speak to me as a white person in a courtroom. Today, the Black man has never been a competitor. Can we compete, people, to make this statement not true? But has always been subservient to the white race. Comfortable in our subservience. This is what he says. And just so long as he remains subservient, his position is secure. Listen to what he says. This is a threat. This is a threat, but see, no Black people were reading this book. But Black people, we're going to read this now. We need to start paying attention to what they have to say to each other. As long as he remains subservient, his position is secure. And just so soon as he becomes a competitor, his fate is sealed. We watched that happen in the 70s and in the 80s and in the 90s. In the 70s, we tried to be a competitor. In the 70s, you had the Nation of Islam rising up. You had the Black Panther Party rising up, trying to compete. What was the result? Pumping drugs into the community, starting mass incarceration, pushing policies like broken windows, racial profiling. You are only safe in your subservience. And on some level, a lot of us know that, which is why we're not willing to do anything. The first thing out of somebody's mouth when you talk about pushing back is, I could go to jail. I could lose everything I have. Because you have been taught. You know that what he's saying is true. As long as you remain subservient, your position is secure. And just as soon as he becomes a competitor, his fate is sealed. It is not necessary that he should work for a white master or remain menial. In a country whose natural resources are undeveloped, as such as the case was with the South, a man may serve a municipality or a state. In North Carolina, for example, there is a need of men to help develop her farms and work in her factories. There is a need of day laborers, carpenters, masons, dressmakers, and laundry women. And so long as the Negro renders this service, he is protected by the white man as a gardener protects his hothouse plants. Nyla says, and Taz say often, they are trying to replace the Negro class with people who will be laborers, carpenters, masons, dressmakers, laundry women, because that's the only reason they kept us around. You heard it here. We don't have to keep them in slavery. At the end of the day, we still need people to do these menial jobs. And as long as they can provide that service, we will protect them. See, this is called benevolent racism. You know how a lot of Black people say, white people have been nicer to me than anybody else. White people have done so many nice things for me. When I was hungry, it was a white man that took me grocery shopping. It was a white woman who gave me a blanket, because some of them are benevolent racists. They're racist, but they're benevolent racists. See, they do nice stuff for you because they view you like a child, like a baby. And you confuse that with somebody liking you. Oh, he's going to talk more about benevolent racism. He's going to talk about the two kinds of whites. A white man talking to other white people. And this is why we need to pay attention to what they have to say to each other. But even here, the struggle for existence is felt. For wherever you find a white man whose work brings him into competition with a Negro, there you find a man who cherishes a bitter hatred of the entire Negro race. This is what Trump was elected on. So let me read this again. But even here, the struggle for existence is felt. For wherever you find a white man whose work brings him into competition with a Negro, there you find a man who cherishes a bitter hatred of the entire Negro race. Trump was built on this. You see, poor whites don't have the mindset to be poor because they have been taught through their heritage that they should be better. So when whites have to compete with Blacks for what were menial jobs at first, it builds hatred in them. This is what this white man is saying. This is an old book. This is an antiquarian book. But it is true today. And that's why we are reading it, because we need a reality check. I am telling you so much of how the world is organized today. Now, mind you, this is a book on Darwinism. Natural selection and the race problem is what it is called. while y'all are teaching your children about race and Darwinism. That is a purely racist ideology. It is freaking false science, and it is a purely racist ideology. This is their literature. This is a medical science book. It was printed in a journal of medicine. The problem of your Blackness, the problem of treating Black people like human beings, the problem of you thinking you can compete with white people. He's about to get very deep into this. And I'm gonna need us all, myself included, to listen to this and not forget what we hear from this white man's mouth here today to other whites, and not think that this is not relevant today. But even here, the struggle for existence is felt, for wherever you find a white man whose work brings him into competition with a Negro, there you find a man who cherishes a bitter hatred of the entire Negro race. And were it not for the protecting arm of the non-competing white man, these rivals of the Negro would turn upon him in a single night. It is this class of men who, when their passions are aroused that they can no longer be restrained, compose lynching parties and create race riots. Let's be clear. He is saying there are two classes of white people. There are the benevolent racists, the wealthy, who see you as a child to be protected so that you can drive their cars and plant their grass and flush their toilets. So you can do their dirty work. Or as Margaret Sanger the other day, you could be a doctor if we can train you to go and deceive your people. See, there's a group of whites that are rich, and that's how they view Blacks. And they protect us from the lower class white people who are competing directly with us and hate us because you should never have to compete with a Black person. Was Trump not elected by that class of people? Is that not why I said I like Trump? Because he exposed what is in this book that we want to act like doesn't exist. We want to act like we live in a post-racial society. When they teach racism in the schools as science, Darwinism, racism in the school as science, because this is a Darwinian book that we're reading right now. But we want to act like racism doesn't exist when it's a commonplace thing. And what he is saying is true today. I don't mean to get, I just get so upset when I read this because I wish I had the power to mush an understanding of this into the heads of every Black person. See, this is not about hating whites, but we must understand how they function because they sure as hell understand how we function. Margaret Sanger sure as hell knew that if she got a Black doctor trained with a white mindset, she could trick us because we trust other Black people. They know all about us. We know nothing about them. But we need to know about them too. Only once in our history did the Negro become a competitor of the white race as a whole, and that was when he aspired to political honors. The political position of the Negro today is but a forecast of his racial position, of what his racial position will be when he undertakes to realize his dream. I have a dream, said Martin Luther King, of commercial, intellectual, and social equality. They saw today coming and they have planned for it. They saw today coming when you would want to be equal to them. Politically, commercially, as in business ownership, positions in corporations, and socially, they saw the day coming. That's why I did my cognitive liberation series and my series on social revolution, where we listened to their philosophers and psychotherapists talk about how they were going to deal with the problem of the Black man and Black woman wanting equality, how they would trick you into believing that you were free and had a say-so in something by giving you a false vote and a couple of talking heads that could actually make no change for you in government. But you guys didn't like those series. Right? You didn't want to hear me read a bunch of paperwork and studies and documents of white people talking about how they keep you in subservience and make you think you're free. That wasn't a fun conversation, right? We're only here for fighting and gender wars and tearing down other Black people. That's all we're here for. We want to ignore all the stuff that we need to know so that you can stop buying into this facade. And when I say you, I mean us collectively as a body. Because whatever you don't like about me or I don't like about you will not change the fact that we will be equally affected by this because of our Blackness, regardless of our differences. And this is what the whites understand that you don't. Note that he addresses both the wealthy whites and the downtrodden whites in this book. And the problem of the Negro, the race problem, is a problem for all white people. It's a problem for all of us too. United, a problem for all of us too. Only once in our history did the Negro become a competitor of the white race as a whole. And that was when he aspired to political honors. The political position of the Negro today is but a forecast of what his racial position will be when he undertakes to realize his dream of commercial, intellectual, and social equality. The recent agitation of the race problem, making all due allowance for the political capital created out of race prejudice, has, in my judgment, been due to this, that the Negro, in a degree, ceased to be useful artisan of which the South stands solely in need, and has divided into two classes: those who aspire to social equality with the whites and those who have retrograded and because of crime and vagrancy have become a menace to civilization. Y'all, tell me you don't view our people this way. You tell me you don't. You tell me you don't view our people like a group of people in the ghetto who are base and a group of educated Black people who are trying to be white. Is that not how we split ourselves up? Huh? How many times have other Black people told me the way I speak is a problem? Buying into the white separation of the Negro population, because there are two types of Negroes: one who strives for equality and is educated, and one who is base and retrograded. And we have embraced this line amongst ourselves. They drew a line in the sand between us, and we have placed each other on one side or the other of that line. I have been guilty of it too. But when you know better, you do better. I fell into this trap with you guys. But we must progress together and claw our way out of this hole. Not like crabs in a barrel where we step on each other's heads, but where we build a human ladder and we push each other up to the edge and the brim of this abyss. And we wreak havoc on those who pushed us in. Let's read about the two types of Negroes again. The recent agitation of the race problem, making all due allowance for the political capital created out of race prejudice, has, in my judgment, been due to this, that the Negro has, in a degree, ceased to be the useful artisan of which the South stands solely in need, and has divided into two classes: those who aspire to social equality with the whites, and those who have retrograded, and because of crime and vagrancy have become a menace to civilization. Professor Du Bois, one of the most scholarly Negroes in this country, In a contribution to the Atlantic Monthly, tells of recent attainments of many Negro graduates. He says that the attainment of the few is the hope of the many, and that this flame of hope can by no possible human agency be extinguished. They study us. They study us. 50 years after this, the lynching stopped and Jim Crow was brought in. 10 years after that, civil rights movement and the end of Jim Crow brought us into the 70s. We want to make like so much time has passed. Somebody's looking at me crazy, Irene. Why are you reading us this old book? Because we are detached from reality. And I'm going to need us to all together move toward the light and wake the hell up. I'm not going to say they're all bad, but I'm going to say that you're a fool if you don't think an agenda is in place and that these mindsets were not taught to their children and their grandchildren. Just like your mindset was taught to you by your mother and your grandparents who learned from their mothers and their grandparents. And yet, if every American Negro could, by some miraculous power, be endowed with Professor Du Bois scholarship, or if every 10th Negro could have his priceless gift, the two races could no longer occupy the same soil. Why do they miseducate our children? Why do they not fund Black schools? Let's read why, because we just read why. If every American Negro could, by some miraculous power, be endowed with Professor Du Bois scholarship, or if every 10th Negro could have this priceless gift, the two races could no longer occupy the same soil. Every page of human history points to the fact that one or the other would have to go. Nor can we doubt that the exodus would take place amid scenes of uproar and carnage. What's going to happen when you really push? He said we could no longer occupy the same soil. One of us would have to go. Hold on, you guys. I have a banana. All right, we had requests for food, a little snack. Let's get back to the book. It is not claimed that the white man would have a greater right to the soil than the Negro, nor that there would be any possible justification for the course that he would pursue. I have seen no vindication of the course pursued with the Indian. Yet I am convinced that if the Negro were in the position to make a contest for supremacy, that the tragedy enacted with the Indian would be repeated. What did they do to the Indians? Huh? What did they do to them? We don't win because what they did to the Indian, we would never consider doing to another group of people. Now, I'm not, look, y'all, some of you out there, and I know some of you out there would turn into white people mentally, just lose all your humanity just like them to defeat them. I'm not a proponent of that. I'm not. The kind of crap that they did to the Indians, the kind of things that they run around the world doing, I would never want to see my people that way. I would never want to become them. I would never want to turn into a psychotic pig. I would never want that. Although I know some of us think that that's the answer. The answer is not to be like them. If they're a problem, it's because of how they are. But let us be clear. We're going to have to stop being so freaking humane and docile. That is going to need to happen. Because when he says what happened with the Indian would be repeated, he's not talking about us doing anything to them. He's saying we would be the ones exterminated. It would be unfortunate. He said there would be no vindication in it, but it would go down because he's a benevolent white. He doesn't really want this to happen. That's why he's writing this. And if this laudable advancement on the part of the best Negro race portends his destruction, how much greater danger from that vicious element which renders the home and highway unsafe for unprotected women. So then they throw their women into it. Because, you know, some of y'all are just roaming around free, like Nick Cannon, right? Lusting after their women who are just wandering the streets unprotected by the vicious element of Black men. In the face of the fact that swift and violent death follows each violation of a white woman, the crime of rape is on the increase. Unknown a generation ago, its alarming frequency. Now, mind you, this is during the time that they were lynching. This is about 50 years before the lynchings stopped, that 100 years of lynching stopped. He's saying, even though we violently kill, take a photo, put it on a postcard, every time a Black person steps out of pocket, they just keep acting crazy. In a medical book. Y'all, this is written. That's what we're reading for those of you coming into the room, a medical book. Natural Selection and the Race Problem. There is a link to it in the description box. Add this book to your collection. Homeschool with this book. Unknown a generation ago, its alarming frequency at the present time, can be accounted for only by the false hopes of social equality. Only by the false hopes of social equality on the part of the lowest Negroes. You know the Black Caucus? That little sprinkling of Black? Well, some of them aren't even Black, y'all. I'm doing a whole piece on the Black Caucus to break down how not Black the Black Caucus really is. I mean, a couple of them aren't Black at all. He's talking about I had a Black grandma. Full on white man. Part of the Black Caucus. I can't. Or great grandma. His great grandma, actually. I don't know. It was one Black person, some distant place in his future, and it's a full-on white man in the Black Caucus. The favorite pet of the political scene. But we'll get there. That's a whole nother life, you guys. It just really is. The false hopes of social equality on the parts of the lowest Negroes could see Cory Booker's blue-eyed self. He can get a position. But Daquan from the block, you have a false hope of social equality. Oh, but it's okay as long as some of us make it and somebody who somewhat looks something like a black person, and we could trace one or two black people somewhere in their lineage. As long as they get it, we're doing good, y'all. We are going to legislate our way into this thing. That's why I tell you guys you need to listen to my Social Revolutions series, because I go into what their scholars say about keeping control over us and how you will never legislate your way and vote your way into anything ever. The system is designed to prevent that. It just makes you feel good. So you'll shut up and go along to get along. Unknown a generation ago, its alarming frequency at the present time can be accounted for only by the false hopes of social equality on the part of the lowest Negroes. He's talking about the rape of white women. This is funny because what did Cynthia G do a piece on black men wanting access to white women? And she used a member who was ousted from the Black Panther Party. And in one of his writings, he talks about that his desire for the hope of social equality had him practice rape on black women so that he could cross the tracks and do it to white women. This is a real black man talking this crazy mess. And strangely, 70 years before, a white man wrote that that's how some black men's minds operate. My mind is, y'all, I don't want my mind to be blown anymore today. There's only so much I could take. So let's try to wrap this book up. It's a very short book, so we won't be here long. There's only 21 pages and we're on page 13. They are unwilling to pay the price of industrial advancement, incapable of mental or moral elevation. They are unwilling to pay the price of industrial advancement, incapable of mental or moral elevation, endowed by nature with a lust closely akin to that of the brute creation, without love of home or country. You know how we sit on YouTube and social media, we talk crap about each other, talk crap about our kids, talk crap about our women, talk crap about our men. That's because they have observed, Negro, that you are closely akin to that of a brute creation without love of home. That's your women, your men, your children, or a country. You are incapable of loving yourselves. You can't love your own home, and you darn sure can't love your country. They can, by the single act of ravishing a white woman, gratify every passion of their depraved natures. This class of Negroes is, relatively speaking, very small, yet it is on the increase. Unless checked, there will surely come a time when the entire Negro population will be made to suffer for the crimes of the few. There's more to that sentence than what we heard. What we also hear in that sentence is the voice of dominance. Because, mind you, this is a medical journal. This was published in a medical journal 50 years before Jim Crow, 60 years before the Civil Rights Movement was successful, and the Nation of Islam sprang forth, and the Black Panther Party sprang forth. 70 years before 1980, where they started pumping drugs into the community. I'm gonna need y'all to understand this is recent history. We want to treat everything like it's far back, way, way back, super, in a distant past. And what's wrong with y'all? You keep talking about it. It starts to make all the other stuff make sense. You know? Because at the highest levels, what did we see with Virginia's governor? He attended a military academy that was comfortable in the 80s, 70 years after this was written, comfortable printing him in a KKK outfit, standing next to somebody with blackface in the 80s. How old were you in the 80s? In 84 specifically. See, we want to treat everything like it's in the distant past, but this is at the highest levels because he attended a military academy and was working to be a pediatrician and is pushing an abortion agenda that disproportionately affects our people. And this was written and published for a medical journal. When Margaret Sanger was talking about the annihilation of the Negro, she said, we will enlist their doctors, we will train them because the blacks will trust a doctor that looks like them. See, they won't trust a white doctor like they'll trust a black doctor. So we want to act like this is not an organized thing. It is very organized. The consideration of how to manage us has been made at the highest levels. Let's keep reading. If by the majority of votes of the southern white men, the Negro might be transported to, say, the Philippine Islands, undoubtedly he would be permitted to remain with us. Personally, we like him, and the South needs his labor. Charles Sumner was approached by a Negro asking alms. He replied, I am interested in you as a race, not as an individual. In the South, men are everywhere interested in Negroes as individuals, while they care little for the race. Okay, so this goes into, because he's about to explain why you can have a positive experience with white people. Because some of them can be interested in you as a singular Black person or as a family of Black persons, but they are incapable of caring for all Black people. See, the white person that likes you doesn't like all Black people. Okay? So let this white man break it down for us. In the medical journal, you know, because this is science. In the South, men are everywhere interested in Negroes as individuals, while they care little for the race. There are a few of you here today who have not given largely to Negroes, nor do you count it a disagreeable task to ride through the country on the seat with your Negro driver. The distinction of the northern white man to come in personal contact with Negroes is the result of racial prejudice, while the southern man feels for his domestic an affection born of mutual dependence. But the old affection and the mutual dependence are on the wane. And no matter how much we may regret the fact, the races are drifting apart. Because remember, you're only good in your subservience. He said that earlier. You start wanting to have your own car and not be the driver of his car, it's a problem. He said that earlier. And this aspiration for social equality on the part of the better class of Negroes, this increase of crime on the part of the worst, and this gradual loss of kindly relation between master and servant point unmistakably to a relationship of the races in the future unlike that which has existed in the past. Students of ethnology tell us that the process of civilization is fixed by immutable law. It can no more be hurried in its course than a glacier or the current of a river. It must pass through the stages definitely fixed as the 7 ages of men. The various forms of society, religions, and governments that have existed in the world have not been the outcome of chance, nor have they been the special creation of any set of men. They have existed because they were only forms. They were the only forms that could exist at certain stages of development. Like stages of development have been characterized by like institutions. Institutions have reacted upon inhabitants and through long periods of time have developed definite forms of civilization. The life of a civilization, like that of an oak, depends for its strength upon the depth and breadth to which the roots are struck. In Africa, the undisturbed Negro is in a savage state. Oh, and think about how many of you guys really believe this. Hmm? Back in the day, they used to have a term African booty scratcher. Being called an African was a negative thing. Every time they showed Africa on TV, it was like flies all over the kid's face. Dirty, pot belly, full of air, children, starving. Hmm? And you believe. I did a video that said blacks let go of Egypt, not because Egypt's not ours, but because I'm gonna need us to understand that there were many, 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 many other great African civilizations. The largest library in the world was in Africa, and it wasn't in Egypt. The Egyptians learned from the Ethiopians. There were several civilizations greater than Egypt. Is Egypt ours? Sure. But see, we obsess about Egypt like it is the end all be all to everything when the Egyptians took their knowledge from places other in Africa. The Egypt is the white man's pet part of Africa. Now we can own it and we can embrace it, but I'm going to need us to embrace all the many other great African civilizations that were larger and more powerful than Egypt. But see, you're brainwashed by being in their schools and hearing their rhetoric about the black people they liked, the black people they could exploit and mate with, the black people that let them come and hang out in their country. And then we think the rest of Africa is full of savages, just like he wrote here. Tell the truth about it. When you were growing up, is that not what you thought of Africa? I don't want the rare, one person who had parents that enlightened him or her to talk about it. I didn't think that. We know what the average thought is. Sometimes we just have to be real about what the average thought is with regard to this. In Africa, the undisturbed Negro is in a savage state. Contact with the whites in this country has given him a laudable desire for civilization. But for this boon, other races have paid a price at every step from which the Negro cannot hope to escape. The white man may divide the product of his civilization, but the civilization itself was molded in the I'm sorry. The white man may divide the product of his civilization, but the civilization itself was molded in the I can't say this word, y'all know I can't. And the I can't do it, y'all. You can read it. Nature and cannot be transferred by human hands. This is a point which many well-meaning friends of the Negro have been unable to grasp. They develop upon a hothouse, plant foliage that invites wind and storm, not realizing that their misdirected energies tend to destroy the object of their solicitude. A grafted pseudo civilization cannot stand the shocks of time. Nearly 1,000 years have passed since Anglo-Saxons wrestled Magna Charta from the hands of their king. Years of slow development in sweat and blood. Of 26 barons who signed that paper, only 3 could write their names. There are 1,000 Negroes in this country today who have the advantage of modern education, but could you find among them 26 men who would be the peers of those grim old heroes that faced King John? He goes on then to talk about the history of slavery and the struggle for existence with men of Anglo-Saxon blood. He talks about how, and you guys can read this yourself, but he talks about how in slavery we were protected from ourselves, but that without slavery, there's alcohol, gambling halls, venereal diseases, all available to us, but there's no check to stop us or help us to resist the temptations that are now open to us. He says our civilization offers individual liberty, but liberty to the ignorant, that would be you and me, is a license for crime. Our civilization offers industrial advancement, but a refusal to comply with the conditions means poverty and disease. He goes on to tell an anecdotal story about a Negro, helpless, pathetic, all his kids are dying of consumption. And then he says, the Negro of the future will labor in a developed country not only unsupported, but in competition with the white man. He must adjust himself to a civilization which he cannot comprehend. And I'm going to tell you, we don't comprehend how this is built. That's why everybody hates, and I'm not looking at the numbers right now, but I know this is going to be one of those videos where y'all just can't vibe with it. Because I know when I did my social revolution series, people couldn't vibe with it, even though the information is so important. Because in order for us to comprehend the civilization, we have to, in order for us to comprehend the civilization, we have to understand the civilization. Hold on one second. I have my littlest, he's on the potty. And when you have little kids on the potty, you have to be a part of the potty time. And with that, we reach the end of this book. And my little one has broke out into a song. But what I want you guys to realize, give me 1 second, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. What I want you guys to realize is that it is essential that we understand fully the mentality of the people who have authored our existence, just period. They have authored it. Now, I know people want to say, no white man controls me, no da 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 da. Look, being in a delusion is not going to help us. Okay? It's not. We need to get real about this. We need to understand what they are speaking of. I really encourage you guys, please, 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 to go and view my social revolution series, because I talk about The methodology, because they've studied us, they've been studying us for a long time. That was a medical journal publication that we just read of how they keep us in check and docile and from desiring actual freedom. Give me 1 second, I'm sorry. Okay. So, for those of you who didn't have an opportunity to go through the book with us, I encourage you to listen to it on the playback. I encourage you to download this and include this book in your library, include this book in your homeschooling regimen. I think it is essential. You know, everything can't be an exciting conversation, right? I feel like with a lot of things, we want to be entertained. We want some sort of sensationalism attached to these conversations that we have. But I think in reality, when I think about us, I think about the fact that we need to have a mental breaking. You know how you break a horse? We need to break our minds. Do you know what I mean? Because without a clear understanding, we cannot fully appreciate the falsehood of the reality that we're looking at. And so that's why I really recommend my Social Revolution series, because it talks about the way that the government is set up. These are scholars. These are people who help develop the status quo for our government and our social order. And they are speaking about how they manage to combine making you feel like you have a part in the political process with keeping control. In the same way that we read today with him speaking on the interactions between blacks and Negroes, the benevolence, the racist benevolence of some whites, and the problem of Negroes wanting equality with whites. In the same way that we heard him speaking of that, this is information that we need because it helps to put things into perspective. It helps to put history into perspective. These are articles that they read amongst themselves at the elite levels, that the common person is not reading. And mind you, the what we just read was on Darwinism. People hear me say there is no race. We're all human beings, right? Some of us are white, but we're all people. And I say that because I refuse to accept a concept that was created by white people to demean us. That's all it was created for, to uplift them and to demean us. They teach this racist ideology in schools. This book that we read is a Darwinian book that was published in a medical journal. And if you didn't get the racist vibe off of that, then I just don't know what to say. Did you like hearing that book, Nikki? I'm looking at the chat now. Hi, you guys. We could talk for, a brief minute. I don't want to keep you guys too much longer, but I am interested to hear your thoughts on it. We're programmed to want to be entertained rather than to want to learn or better ourselves. That's so true, Flat Accord Music. That is so true. I always somehow knew we were never and will never be equal to them. Their playing ground will never be fair. That's so true, Positive Queen on Purpose. That is true. Little Miss Chocolate, it opened my eyes more widely too. You know, I'm not here on YouTube professing to be the guru of all things. It's a process for me, like it's a process for you. And all I try to do is share the realizations I'm coming to with you and then hear what you have to say so that together we can do this, right? Because this has to be a collective thing. I mean, Ms. Buckner, because you know I'm not about to drag your name again because I'll ruin your name. I'll call you everything but what you are, Ms. Buckner. But you're right. We need to take a different approach. But we're too scary to take a different approach. I mean, you read in the book, he said, we have never been a competitor. That's what he said about our people. We've never been a competitor because we're not willing to do what we really need to do to compete. Those who built the goalpost get to move the goalpost. Exactly, flat accord music. But you heard him say, if they push too hard, we're going to have to do to them what we did to the Indian, which they basically annihilated and decimated the native population of this land. You can't be more real than that. You can't be more real than in a medical journal, okay? Publishing that. And you know what's even crazier is they have no fear of you reading these things because they keep this literature around. I have I collect antiquarian reference books. I have a reference book called Land and Peoples, an old version of it. And the way they talk about non-white people is insane. Y'all, it's crazy. It really is crazy. Yes, Nikki Love, that is just what's happening. That's how I felt when I was reading this. And I had recommended this book to you guys in the past. I don't think anybody read it though. It's in other description box. I'm like, this is a book you guys need to read, right? And it's been on my list because I have all these videos and all this stuff I want to talk to you guys about. And today I was like, today's the day we're going to read this book. And it blew my mind too, Nikki, in the same way it blew your mind because I was like, oh my goodness, that's what's going on. It made, like I said, that book was written 55 years before the lynching stopped and Jim Crow started, 60 years before Jim Crow ended, 70 years before the 80s, where they started pumping drugs into the community and began mass incarceration. You follow me? That's when that was written, to put it in perspective. And so then it makes everything make sense because this is the mindset. There's a problem that we have to deal with. It's called the race problem, right? Natural selection and the race problem is the title of the book. Yeah, they are savage. It's crazy. Yes, self-care boss. I believe that. We call that white fragility, right? They cannot deal with competition. He said it in his book. That class of whites that has to compete with blacks will go insane. They will turn on us. They're not with it. So I'm going to go with that, you guys. I just really wanted to share this book with you. Please be sure that you thumbs up this video. I anticipate this is not going to be a popular video for me. I know when I did my cognitive liberation series, when I did my social revolution series, which I still need to do the last part of, they were not popular. I did them anyway, y'all, because some of you were interested. But the thing is that I've said this before and I'll say it again. I don't want to entertain you. That is not my goal. You know, that's not my goal. Thank you, Paul. But that's not my goal. I know that a lot of my content is not as salacious and entertaining as some others. You know, even when I do interviews, y'all know I don't like to get with the foolishness. But I hope that it does something else. That you don't walk away and, oh, I had a good time listening to Irene's video, but that you walk away and you're thinking and viewing society and the status quo in a different way. Because until we collectively start seeing this thing for what it is, we aren't going to have the passion to do what needs to be done to correct it. We aren't going to be a competitor. He says we have never been a competitor, and I would agree with that white man. But now is the time that we need to compete. Because as he said, somebody will get snuffed out. We have to move past our divisions and work collectively. So with that said, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Please do click the thumbs up on your way out. If you have any thoughts about this, oh, did she be one for life? Yeah, shopping. Yeah, I haven't seen that one by Cynthia, but I will have to check it out. Thank you so much, Little Miss Chocolate. If you have any thoughts that can expand on this, please share them down below. If you have any other reading recommendations that we can all benefit from, please be sure to share those in the comment section as well. What else can I say, y'all? But that I love you guys, and I hope that you gleaned as much from this as I did. And keep in mind that the description for the book is in my description box. I'm sorry, the link for the book is in my description box. So if you want to read the entire book, which is a very short book, you could read it just, in an afternoon, casually. I would encourage you to do that. Okay? Thank you so much, Stephen. And with that said, I'm going to go, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.